The next object that we need is to model a palm tree, and we'll start in the empty scene since we disabled the visibility of the ruins collection. And just to be sure, let's click the main collection, so we are creating new objects in there, and let's add a new one. And this time we'll need a cylinder, because first we are going to model the trunk of the tree, and the cylinder is closest we can get when it comes to shape. So let's press Shift A, mesh, and add a cylinder. Now in this menu right here, as I explained before, you can see there's a vertices value, and we'll set this to 8. So we have a cylinder with 8 sides. And now tab into the edit mode, and again I need this to have a pivot point on the bottom of the object, and since the default object has a diameter of 2 meters and a height 2, we know we just need to move this 1 meter on the z-axis. So press G, then Z, 1, and enter. And now we want to scale this down a little bit, but we want to keep that pivot position. So if we were to scale this right away here in the edit mode, you see we are scaling based on the median point of the selected vertices, just like we have selected here. And we could switch this to cursor and scale based on that, but many times you have cursor elsewhere and you just want to quickly scale your object. So let me go back with Ctrl Z, and I think the quickest way in this case would be just to tab out and scale. And since we are scaling in the object mode, the center for the transformations is the pivot point of the object. But don't forget one thing, and that's the scale here. And as I mentioned before, we want to apply that if we want to keep the dimensions. So yeah, let's apply the scale. So Ctrl A and press scale. Now we can continue with the modeling, and there won't be much to do here. We just need to go into the edit mode and alt click the bottom loop of the cylinder and scale it down. So press S and scale this to make this kind of shape, and this will serve as a base for our palm tree. Now let's just tab out of the edit mode, and we'll need one other thing to complete the trunk, and that's a curve. And this is a new type of object that we'll be working with, and curves are basically 2D lines represented in 3D space by points, and one of them is a Bezier curve. So let me just press Shift A, and here underneath the mesh you have the option to create the curve, and there are a bunch of different types, but right now we are interested in the Bezier curve. So let's click this, and you can already see there's a line created here which has pivot point in the center of the scene. If you tab into the edit mode, you can see there are points and these handles, and you maybe know this concept from other software like Illustrator or Photoshop or something, but if not, let me just explain really fast. So if I switch to the top view, so I have a 2D representation, you can click the point like any other vertex on a 3D model and move it with G. So the same rule applies here, and you can see how the shape of the curve changes, and that's based on the rotation and length of these handles. And you can select the points there too. So if you select the point on the handle and press G to move, you can see you can not only affect the length of the handle, but also rotate the whole point with the other handle too. And this type of curve basically defines the curve bar by 2 points, and these lines, which are perpendicular to the radius of the circle that would be created by this curve here, by this curvature. Let me draw here a little bit. So, as I said, this handle defines the circle here, which has a center here, and these handles are perpendicular on the radius of this circle. And we have other one right here, which would have center right here. So the circle would look something like this. And excuse my poor drawing, please. So the radius would go right here, and we have handles right here. And now what the algorithm of the curve does, it takes the first point, it goes along the circle, and then here too, and then it interpolates between the last possible point on the circle and connects these two. So basically this is a final shape of the curve. Now let me clear this real quickly, and we can exit this. I will delete the curve and create a new one right here. So Shift A and create the Bezier curve. And now we want to use this curve to define the shape of the palm tree trunk. So if we look from the side, we want it to go from the bottom of the tree in a slight curvature right here. So if we tap into the curve, by these little arrows on the curve, you can see what's the direction of the curve, and that gives you the information that this is a starting point. So we need to have the starting point right here where the center of that modified cylinder is, and the second point up there where the trunk will end. So let's first rotate the curve, but I want to do this in object mode. And this is needed to array and curve modifiers to work with it properly later, but we'll get to that. Now let's rotate this curve so it goes from bottom up. So press R, then Y. I want to rotate this on the Y-axis, and let's enter -90 degrees. Enter. And now you can see the curve has a proper direction that we need. And we can now go to the side view, not the front view that we used with the numpad 1, but side view. That's number 3 on the numpad. Let's tab into the edit mode. And I want to move this point right here to the center of the scene. But first we need to rotate it. So we get rid of this curvature right there. So let's click this, press R to rotate, and the same rules as with vertices and other objects apply. So let's hold Ctrl to snap and snap it so it goes directly up. Perfect. And now let's just select the point here, press G, then Z, and again hold Ctrl to snap, and let's snap it in the middle here. So it's perfectly in the center, and we can check that here, which says 0, 0, 0. Okay, that's it for the curve now. Let's tab out and rotate the view. So we have a good starting point, and now just rename the curve to palm curve. So we are tidy, and rename the cylinder here to palm. And for this to work, we need to add the array modifier to this object. And that you already know, so just locate the modifiers tab right here, click, add a new modifier, and let's select array. And now we want this to form a trunk. So let's set x to 0 and z to 1. And we want to increase the count to create a palm tree trunk. So I don't know, let's just set it to 10. I think that'll be enough. And now to match the curve to the height of the tree, let's go back to the side view on the numpad 3. Select the palm curve here in the inspector. Go into the edit mode. And now we'll select the top point. But be careful, it's not this one here, because that's the point on the handle. You need to select this one here and just press G, then Z to stay on the Z axis. And let's snap this. Doesn't have to be completely precise, so let's just move it here to the top. Now exit the edit mode with tab, select the palm, and we'll add another modifier. So go here, add modifier, and search in the deform part, search for curve. It's here in the top. So let's add this. And it doesn't have so many options. And what the curve modifier actually does, it takes some object and modifies the shape along some other curve. So for example, if you're familiar with the text on curve concept, that's similar. So this is basically the same principle. Only thing we need to do is here in the object part, select our palm curve, and you can do that by clicking here and writing the name or selecting from the list. Or when you have many objects in the scene or in the inspector and you don't want to write, you can always just click this eyedropper tool and find the curve somewhere here. But right now I think the fastest way will be just to select from the list and select the palm curve. And right now, if we select the palm curve and go into the edit mode, we have still the top point selected. So let's just press G to grab it and move it along, and you can see what this does. Pretty nice, right? Okay, now we will have to find the desired shape for our palm tree. So let's just move this on the y-axis. I think somewhere like here, not too crazy, something like 0.5 meters. And then we'll just adjust these handles so we have a nice curve there. So press R and rotate it like this a little bit. Now exit the edit mode with tab, and what I want you to do right now is to set a parent to the curve. So when we move the object, the curve moves with it. So if you will move the object right here, you can see it's deformed because its deformation are based on the relative position to the curve. So I want to make this easy to move. So let's just select the palm curve here, then hold Shift and select the palm. And if you go to the object, you can see there is a parent and object. Now you can see there is a Ctrl P shortcut, and I always encourage you to use shortcuts so your workflow is much faster. So let's just do that and press Ctrl P, and you just get some options, and we want to set this as a parent to object. And one other important thing when setting a parent, actually the order how you selected the objects matter, because the last object you selected is going to become a parent after applying this command. And that's because when you have a multiple object selected, you can always just shift click another one, and you can see this one, this outline went a little bit darker orange, and the curve is now highlighted in yellow. So basically what it's called, this object is selected object, and this one too, but at the same time it's active. And to make object active, when you have it already selected, you just click it again by holding shift, and it will become active. And now what parenting actually is in this context. Here in the outline editor, you maybe saw these little arrows here, and you can expand on that and see what the object actually contains. And you can see a bunch of different things here, like the mesh of the object, or you can see the list of modifiers here, and you can expand it further. But here you can see there is a palm curve, which is a child of the palm object. So now when you just click the palm and move it along, since this is parented, the palm curve moves with it and no distortions happen. But please bear in mind that selecting the object which has multiple children doesn't select the children too. So if you would duplicate this, for example, let me do Shift D, you can see it would still have the same curve in its modifier, because we didn't duplicate the original curve. To do that, you have to select the children of the object too. And there is one simple way to do that. If you just hold shift and press the bracket, the right bracket key, you can expand your selection. And again, if you hold shift and press left bracket key, you can modify that selection back, so you have only the main object selected. So when you tap shift right bracket and then duplicate the object, you duplicated not only that object but the children too. Let me now delete this and let's get back to the palm tree modeling. Now there's one other thing I want to do with this trunk, and that's to make the top face here smaller and gradually be bigger and bigger as you go to the bottom. And we can't do this with array modifier, so select this with the left click, and we're gonna need to apply that array modifier the same as we did with the stairs. So apply this, but please mind this is a destructive operation and you're losing the ability to work with these objects separately. So click apply, and now if you go into the edit mode, you can see in the edit mode the curve modifier isn't applied, so it's a little bit easier for you to modify the geometry. And let's press 3 to face select and click on the top face, and now enable proportional editing, press O and switch these from random to smooth. And now we're gonna just scale this. Let's press Shift Z to limit this on X and Y axis and scale it down. And now we can modify this with the mouse wheel, and we can find the fall off we need, and I think this looks pretty okay, and maybe not scale so much. Okay, and confirm. And right now the shape looks much better, and if we tab out, we have our palm tree trunk. Now we're gonna model some leaves, so let's add a plane, Shift A, click Mesh, Plane, and we'll enter the local view, so press the slash on the numpad, and that temporarily hides everything else you have. And you can see right here where the camera settings says user perspective, you can see there is a local, and if you press slash again, the local disappears and everything else is visible. So let's go into the local view and press numpad 7 to look from the top. Now go into the edit mode, and we will make a leaf from this plane. So let's slice it up a little bit. We're gonna press Ctrl R and make 6 cuts right here, so like this, or rather 5 cuts to create 6 faces. And remember, we are doing this with the mouse wheel, and after you confirm with a click, you can press escape to confirm, or rather to cancel the movement. And right now let's press Ctrl R again and make 1 slice on the y-axis like this. Okay, and let's go to the vertex select by pressing 1, select all, and scale. Let's disable the proportional editing by pressing O, and S to scale, X to scale on the x-axis, and we'll define the width of the leaf. I think something like this looks nice. And right now let's drag the selection around these top vertices. Let's enable the proportional editing again, so let's press O, S and X to scale on the x-axis, and we'll need to reduce the size of this to create a nice shape. Let's now scale the bottom ones, so drag the selection around them, S, X, and scale them down. And you can additionally just select maybe these 2 edges and press S without limiting to the x-axis, and scale it like this to create a nice leaf. And the last part with the leaf, I want to create cut in the leaf, and there's a tool for that which is called Rib Region, and it's right here down at the bottom of the toolbar. You just click it, you select your vertex, click and drag, and move it away. Of course, let me go back. There's a better way, as you already know. We can use shortcuts, and the shortcut is just V. So let's press V and move the vertex away, and we can now select this one and press G. Let's turn off the proportional editing and turn G to move it a little bit away. Okay, and that's our basic shape for some palm leaf. And now when we have the plane ready, we can give it some 3D geometry. So let's rotate the view with the middle mouse, and let's select this vert right here and turn on the proportional editing, press G then Z to grab it up and make a really large fall off like this and drag this up, and you can see how this makes a nice leaf shape. Okay, maybe like this. I want the end of the leaf to go down, not like this, but like this. And you can control this with the mouse wheel, as you already know. Okay, confirm with the left click. And the last thing I want to do, let's go to the side view by pressing 3 on the numpad. Let's select all and press G and grab this, so this vertex is approximately in the middle of the scene, because I want the pivot point of this leaf object to be right here. Let's tab out, and this is exactly what I wanted. And now we just want to give it some structure, because this is just a plane right now, and it will be completely okay to work with this. And if you are working on a game or planning to use these in VR in some game engine or something like this, you better leave it as a plane, because you need that low poly count. But right here in this illustration I want to give it some thickness, so we'll use a solidify modifier for that. And let's just go to the modifiers tab, add modifier, and let's find solidify right here. And I'm okay with the thickness, with the default thickness. So yeah, this is our low poly leaf. Let's exit the local view, so let's press slash on the numpad. And now we want to have this leaf exactly where the curve ends. And there is a very simple way to do that. We can use snapping. So let's select the curve here. So only the curve is highlighted. And if you have a problem with this, you can always go into the palm, expand this and click palm curve here. Now go into the edit mode and select this top control point right here. And let's press Shift S, and that's a command for snapping. And you can see multiple options right here, and one of them here at the bottom says cursor to selected. And most of the time I use these two on the top and on the bottom, selection to cursor and cursor to selected. And you can already see where this is going. We're going to snap the cursor to selected, so click this on the bottom, tab out of the curve. Let's select the leaf, press Shift S again, and now we're gonna snap selection to cursor. So click that, and yeah, the origin point of the leaf, which was at the center of the scene, is now snapped perfectly to the end of the curve. Now, before we start duplicating the leaves, I want to set the name to leaf, so we don't have to do it manually for all the leaves then. So let's call it leaf. And right now we can go to the top view, so press 7 on the numpad. We're gonna duplicate and rotate this leaf 4 times to create 5 leaves. So let's press Alt D to duplicate, and then immediately, without confirming, press R. So you change the command to duplicate and then immediately rotate, and just rotate it somewhere here. Now repeat this 3 more times, so Alt D, R, rotate, Alt D, R, and again. Now we can rotate this view, and I want to create 5 other leaves which are over these and are a little bit smaller. So we'll make use of another command chain, and you will see how this is really convenient, where you can chain up to 4 or 5 commands on the keyboard and really speed up your workflow. So let's press Alt D to duplicate, then press R to enable rotation, and now press X to rotate along the X-axis. But as you remember, if you press X again when rotating, you will switch to the local view of the leaf. So let's do that. And now you're creating duplicate like this. Okay, let's bring it up. And now I want to go back to the top view. I want to rotate this, so press R and rotate to go in between the leaves, because we don't want it to be so uniform. And now again we just need to Alt D and rotate to fill the gaps here. So press Alt D to duplicate, R to rotate, and again, and one last time, Alt D plus R. Okay, now we can rotate the view back to the perspective with the middle mouse button, and this already starts to look like a palm, but we need to give it some variation. So yeah, let's resize some leaves. So let's look from some better angle here, and yeah, we can just select the leaves and make slight adjustments to the size like this, and yeah, we can make these a lot smaller. So again, I'm just selecting the object, pressing S and confirming with the left mouse button. Okay, and now I want to have even more variation, and we can use the freeform rotation that I've shown you in the previous episodes. So let's just select the leaf, press R and then R again. And we can do some various angles here. And that's only to keep this from really looking procedurally modeled. So the fact that each leaf is the same object could make the tree look uninteresting. So that's why we are doing all these rotations and little variations. Okay, I'm quite satisfied with the looks of this. So the last thing I want to do is to parent that leaves to the palm. So let's do that. Let's select them all, and I missed these two, so let's hold Shift and click here and here. And as you remember, when parenting, the last object is the active, so let's click the palm by holding Shift, and you can see it's highlighted in yellow, so we can press Ctrl P and click object. Now if you look in the outline view, there's not only the palm curve, also leaves. They are part of the palm object, and if we collapse this and select only the palm, we can move it as a whole. And what's best, if you select it all and, for example, create not linked but standard duplicate. So let's create a duplicate here. You can always go and modify the curve of the object. You would of course need to move the leaves elsewhere, and this could be done with some script or constraints or something like that, but yeah, I think this kind of editability is enough, and when you're creating palms you can always just move the leaves where you need. But it's nice to have the option to modify the trunk. Okay, and now if you want to duplicate this, and I've shown you before when I talked about parenting, but I want to go a little bit back to it so you really get the grip. When I select the tree trunk and I want to select the children of the object, I can hold Shift and press right bracket, and all the objects in the hierarchy of the palm are selected. And there is also alternative way how to do this. If you don't remember the keyboard shortcut, just go here into the object, select it, and right now just right click here, and there is an option here to select hierarchy. So click and you have all the objects selected, and you can duplicate them or whatever you need. So now when we have it all selected, the only way remaining is to move it into a separate collection. So let's press M, new collection, and let's name it palms. Click OK, and we can disable it here in the outline view and reset the cursor to 0, so Shift C. Okay, that was a palm tree. Let's move to the next chapter.